everyone, and to week 3 of Garbogust. Anything goes. So guys, if you have been around my channel for any length of time, you know that on occasion I will mention the book The Ruins and how those characters drove me insane with how stupid they were. If you aren't familiar, it is about a group of teenagers who fight an evil vine and things happen. That is a complete generalization, but suffice it to say, I was rooting for the vine because those characters were idiots. And no joke, I think I might have found a worse one. So today's book is Satan's Manor. Now, again, amazing title, really kick-ass cover. And truth be told, not a bad story. It has potential, but there's so much wrong here. So your book opens with this young woman by the name of Miriam, and she's an aspiring actress. And things happen, you know, she has this friend group, and a number of them are named, but she gets approached by this like weird shadow person who waits outside her apartment, which should tell you all you need to know about doing this like B-movie called Satan's Manor. And there's a little bit of backstory about this house. It's apparently this haunted, huge mansion, and it's owned by this really like mysterious figure, and he wants to shoot a movie there about the origins of the house and all of this. And you know, it's your standard like, here's a house, bad shit happened, now it's haunted. You've seen this trope. And I don't mind that trope. I think it can be done well. It wasn't here. So the girl, you know, she takes off. I want to say it's in Georgia. I think it's in Georgia. And she's in New York. So she takes off, she drives. There's a lot of information, like unnecessarily so, about her drive. And at one point she like almost hits this dog when she's like trying to find the little turnoff for this house because it's like way back in the middle of nowhere. And you know, that's like your first clue that something weird has happened. You know, it put me in mind, if you guys saw the Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one with Winona Ryder, do you remember when Keanu Reeves is getting ready to get dropped off and like that, I think it was a Romanian family perhaps, you know, she gives him a rosary and is like, here, you know, they come out at night, you know, you need this to protect yourself. That's kind of what this scene was. Okay, like, she runs into the dog and it gets in her head like, hey, you know, something's wacky going on here, but the show must go on. So she heads to the house and you have an overwhelming amount of time spent on what this house looks like. And your girl loves some detail. I love detail in my books. And even I was like, okay, we get it. It's a big old house. And they also tell you about like the newer parts that were put in. Again, spoilers, I'm sorry. These books are awful and I have to tell you why they're awful, so spoilers. And come to find out the owner, the original owner of the house, was like involved in this cult, and you come to find out it was like a satanic offshoot. And they focus specifically on this one, like, I don't want to say it's an Oculus window, but it's kind of like this big pointy window thing. I'm really bad at dimensions, architecture, the whole nine. So just believe me when I say they focus on this one part of the house with a window. In true trash fashion, there's a ton of sex, except, get this, so, you know, they each get their own room, right? And like only part of the house has electricity, and somehow they're all cool with this. And throughout the course of the book, our main girl, who plays the main character in the movie, so don't get that twisted, our main character girl also plays the main character girl in the movie that they're shooting in the book. So she tells you about how like she sees all of the accoutrement of the movie, you know, kind of like vans and shit, but like no actual shooting has happened, and they keep putting it off and keep putting it off and keep putting it off, and they won't tell her why. And at first she's just like, okay, wait, I'm just happy to make a movie. And then she starts to get a little bit more interested into why. It takes her a real long time, like a stupid amount of time, to actually get interested into why they're not shooting the movie, but I digress because that's not even the beginning of her stupidity. So she starts like doing the director, except it's real weird. Like, she finds this powder around her bed, and at first she thinks it's like pesticide because that's how that's what you do with pesticide, is you sprinkle it around so people can walk through it with their bare feet and shit. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but that's exactly how I do pesticides. And so the director will just like come into her room and they'll do it, and then he'll leave, except then you find out, and it's alluded to earlier in the book, this is the best part of the whole book, in my opinion. It's alluded to that she talks about the face, or like how sometimes she'll look at people and they all have these like weird faces. And it's described, but it's real weird. It's like, almost like the faces are rubber and they're moved around. So it's kind of creepy, right? So it talks about how like even when she was a little girl, she could see this face thing, but only with random people. And so then this like entity comes into her room and they name him, and supposedly he's like one of the demons of hell and all this, but that's not important really. And apparently like she has forgotten that he was her like childhood imaginary friend, and because his face looks like that, and you know, she's like had it in the back of her head about how like, oh, you know, I'm actually seeing my demon imaginary friend in these, I don't know, it's real convoluted, and it's really kind of cool. Like he's kind of impish, you know, like kind of like not evil sometimes, like kind of like I'm just gonna mess with you, but then at certain points he seems kind of evil because there's this whole thing about how like she has to invite him in almost like a vampire. And she's struggling with this, like seeing this entity, and she's trying to like figure out like, oh, is it the influence of the house and all this? But she's real dumb. And you know, life is harder when you're dumb. And so she eventually like breaks and invites him in. And then you get this whole thing, and it's never really said, like it kind of is, but it's still very ambiguous about like, is that who she's boning and not the director? Because later on in the book, it's talking about how, like, she gave herself to the demon guy, her, like, imaginary friend person from her childhood, like, gave herself. And it's like, are you telling me she boned the demon? Because I'm pretty sure you're telling me she boned a demon. So all of this is happening. Various things, you know, like, some of the people get sick and all this. And then she goes off and tries to, like, talk to a priest about it. And then she's like, oh, you know, I've been an atheist for years. I don't know why I'm here, blah, blah, blah. Because the priest starts to tell her, like, hey, you know, this house has a terrible history. Yeah, you might be seeing some of this shit. So, you know, she gets mad. She's like, I can't believe I came to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And then, and this is one of the craziest parts of the book for me. So then it's almost like you get this character flip. Because up until now, she's been stupid, but she hasn't been, like, egotistical. And then all of a sudden, it's like the switch gets flipped and she starts talking like, I'm the star of the show. I'm so beautiful. I have the best body and all. And it's like, where did this come from? Where did this come from? Like, it just seemed to not really go with the character that you had been introduced to. It was real weird, like the way those two things happened. It was almost like two different characters. You know, it was kind of jarring for the reader, I thought. And so to me, I was like, okay, is she getting like an influence from the house? Is that why she's doing this? Because you guys have seen that trope, like you live in a haunted house, very Amityville horror, like, you know, your personality changes or whatever. No, it wasn't that. It was just, I guess, like bad writing. I'm not sure. So then we get to our like climax of the book. And this is when the final nail went in the coffin for this girl, for me. This is when she assumed the throne of one of the dumbest characters I have ever read. So they finally tell her that they're going to start shooting. And they're going to do it at night. In this house that has like little to no electricity. So keep that in mind. And, you know, she's like, yeah, cool. And so it talks about how like she's, you know, getting makeup and how everybody's in robes. And the first scene they're going to shoot is this wedding between the house's former owner and his wife, the one who like later on became a Satanist. And so she's like, okay, cool. You know, they're probably all in robes because, you know, they were Satanists back then, right? And so she walks in and, like, there's a legit satanic mass happening. Okay? Like, her best friend is getting led in naked, sitting on a pillow and getting possessed and shit. There's, like, smoke. I mean, the whole nine. Like, all of it. All of it. People reading Bible verses. You know, people she's never seen, including like political figures that she does know, start showing up on like different places. And this whole time, she's like, that's not in the script. What are they doing that for? And I'm like, are you dense? What in the actual hell? And it just keeps going. It just keeps going. And you know, your girl, I love religious stuff like that. Love it. So, I mean, of course, I'm like, yeah, let's sacrifice her. Let's do something because she's a moron. And it just kept happening. Like every time something weird happened, like, you know, they'd like light a candle and take a dagger out or something. She'd be like, I don't remember reading that. That must be a revision or something. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna murder you. And so let me read you, let me give you a taste of what I'm talking about. Sam took Miriam's arm and led her over to the center throne, and Aldo Natate, who was still sitting there, now stood and smiled at Miriam. Then he walked over to Miriam and took her arm, and Sam, Miriam, and Lenate turned to face the congregation. Far below, down on the altar, poor Roxanne was still lying back on her big purple pillow, completely motionless, her little legs spread out shamelessly towards the audience. Miriam felt a pang of pity for her, but there was nothing that she could do for Roxanne now. Despite the shuffling that had been done on the scene, Miriam knew what was coming next. The ceremony was ending, and soon she would be speaking her lines. She still didn't quite understand what to do, however. According to the script, she was supposed to be marrying Abanov in this scene, and Abanov was supposed to be played by Dawn. Yet Jacobs was performing the role of the priest, and that made no sense at all. And this is like, she has like came into the room, been led down the aisle, they've said like speeches and shit and invoked Satan and chanted and all of this, and she's still talking about scripts. And then there's this big boss battle where the priest that she visited shows up and like the house starts to crumble and, you know, Satan sort of like rises out of the smoke and all this, and this idiot is still like, well, the priest ruined our scene. Like, no joke, I was having ruins flashbacks, people. I'm telling you, idiot. So it all goes down. The priest, you know, triumph, the Satanists run away. She has this, like, I guess a week recovery period where the priest has to, like, I don't know, do some, like, residual exorcisms. I'm not real sure because, you know, it really wasn't said that she was possessed. But then she had to like spend the week with the priest, and I don't know. It was like petering out at that point. After that whole scene with her and the script and the Satanist, I was fried. At the end, you know, it kind of all comes out like the priest is like, yeah, you know, the house was this and it was possessed and blah, 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 blah. The end. It was very much like, we're going to try to wrap all of this religious shit up in the last few pages. Here you go. Now, I want to stress that this story had a lot of potential. It really did. But the absolute idiocy of your main character completely blew it for me. It was very much a ruins experience because, you know, beyond the fact that she was a moron, you also had this strange flip where she went from like being just super happy to be in a movie to being like, I am so beautiful, I'm so attractive, and being very egotistical. And I was like, where is this coming from? Because again, if that was supposed to signify her becoming like indwelt by something like a demon, it wasn't clear. It wasn't done well. If that was what the case was at all, let's say. And then of course you had all of this like superfluous like, look at the turrets and look how old this part of the house is, and for the love of God, we know. And then of course the whole like, let's bone the director around this bed that's full of pesticide. You know, it was like, why? We don't need this. We don't need this. Like the whole, I'm assuming like maybe the whole boning the director thing was supposed to like give way to the demon coming in. I don't know. It was very unclear. So again, I stress that it was a good story, but there was just so much here that I guess it all kind of got lost in translation maybe. And the fact that you add in a main character that's a moron really just dug its grave for me. But guys, tell me, what do you think? Can a character like the one I described, Miriam, can that really like make a book terrible for you? Because I feel like it can for me. And it's only happened twice now, but I really think it can make me like really dislike a book. Tell me, comment down below. I would love to know what you think. Are characters that influential for you? Or can you get by with a good plot? And guys, I hope you were having a good week of Garbogust. Please don't forget, let me know what you're reading down below. You know, I am very new to trashy garbage books, so I'm learning from you guys. So please comment down below. Tell me your thoughts, how you're doing this week with Garbogust, what you're reading, everything. And of course, if you like this, please hit like, hit subscribe. It would really help me out. And until next time, bye for now.